He's Zoom recording. And admit him.
Let's admit. Hello, hello. People are coming in. We're starting the meeting. Glad to have you all here. Expect more people will come as the meeting goes on. But it's 7:59. We'll wait for just a few more, just a little bit as we let some more people come on in before I launch into my spiel. But I'm going to spend most of my time answering your questions rather than just sort of speaking off the top of my head. But I recognize some folks here. John Winder, glad to see you here. And all right. All right, it is now officially 8 o'clock. So glad for all of you who have joined here at the beginning. My name is Jim Bennett. I am running for Sandy City Mayor. And I just want to give you a brief overview of why I'm running and some of the issues that are important to me. And then I want to open this up to a broader discussion to discuss the issues that are important to you. I want to, at some point tonight, touch on ranked choice voting because that's a real issue. A lot of people don't understand ranked choice voting, and Sandy City is doing that for the first time this year. So I want to get into a brief discussion of that. But just to give you a broader sense of who I am, my name is Jim Bennett. I've lived in Sandy City since 2002 when I moved to Sandy to be Sandy City's communications director. And when I first started working for the city, the mayor came in and said to me, "You're going to discover that Sandy City is a great place to work." And it was a really interesting thing for me to hear at the time, but it turned out to be true. And for most of the time that I have lived here in this city, Sandy City has been the jewel of the Wasatch Front in terms of how city governments are supposed to operate. And I think we almost took it for granted that Sandy City was just going to be the model for all of the other cities in the state. And Mike Edmonds, who is a former city councilman who's supporting me in this race, said to me, "I didn't think we could lose so much so quickly." But we really have. I think the last few years, you've seen a breakdown of city government, and the mayor's office and the city council refuse to even talk to each other. The mayor hasn't, I was speaking to somebody who said the mayor hasn't talked to his department heads in 5 months, which is just stunning to me. And I thought, okay, I looked at the race and everybody that was running was either on the city council, had been on the city council, or works for the city council. And I said, look, if you want more of the same, if you want the status quo, you've got plenty of people who are going to give it to you. But I'm the candidate in the race that can offer a fresh perspective, that can offer us a new start. And that's what I think Sandy City needs. I believe the issues that we're facing, the predominant issue is one of growth. How do we handle our growth? Sandy City is going to grow whether we want it to or not. And we need to make sure that we manage that in a responsible way, that we focus high density multi-housing units in the downtown Sandy area so that we're not dropping them into the middle of neighborhoods. And we also need to focus on public safety, make sure that our police and our firefighters have the resources they need to do their jobs. I feel very strongly that we need to revitalize our arts programs, particularly in the Sandy Amphitheater. I think there have been real problems there. But there are a number of issues that I think are important going forward. But I want to hear from you what you think the important issues are. So with that as an introduction, I want to throw the floor open. Please feel free. Kelly Cassidy is my campaign manager, and he's going to, Kelly, if you could put your phone number in the chat, if somebody doesn't want to speak out, if they could text you questions, that would be great. But otherwise, anybody that wants to jump into the fray, please come off mute and ask a question. or I can just keep talking. How many of you are familiar with ranked choice voting? Just by a show of hands. Or have you heard about ranked choice voting? Yeah, I've got David there raised his hand. A lot of you have your cameras off. So ranked choice voting, this is the first time this year that we've done ranked choice voting. And the way it works is you're going to get a ballot, and it's going to have all 8 of the mayoral candidates listed. And you get to rank the candidates in your order of preference. So hopefully you would put Jim Bennett as number 1, and then you could put the other candidates as number 2, 3, 4, all the way through 8. And ranked choice voting is also known as instant runoff voting. So what happens is they count all the ballots, and then they decide who comes in last. And their votes are lifted out of the mix, and everybody that voted for the person who comes in last, those votes are given to their second place choice. And then they count all the ballots again. And they keep doing that, and they keep letting the person who comes in last drop out until one person gets 50% of the vote. And it's a lot of people were very frustrated to see this happen. I, for one, was a little frustrated in that I'd started campaigning in February, and they made the decision in April. And so this campaign started as a sprint to an August primary, and it ended up being a marathon to a November election. And a lot of people I'm seeing in the chat, somebody says, I hate ranked choice voting. You never get the real candidate. You get watered down people. It's not a good idea. Okay, Karen asks about bulk waste, and we'll get to that right after we talk about ranked choice voting. It was interesting because, there were 7 of us campaigning prior to when we could actually register as candidates. And after the registration, there were 13 candidates on the ballot, and 6 of those candidates had registered because they hate ranked choice voting. And their goal was just to mess up the ranked choice vote. And they were trying to push the mayoral ballot to 2 pages in order to make it look more complicated and look like more of a mess. 5 of them have withdrawn. So now there are only 8 candidates, and all candidates will be on one ballot. So I understand the frustration with ranked choice voting. I didn't really have a say in it. The city council, you've got 4 members of the city council who are running for mayor. And so you have to presume that the city council thought this might be a good thing for city council candidates who are running for mayor. For my part, I have to play the cards I'm dealt. This is the system that we're dealing with. You are welcome to vote for only one candidate if that's what you want to do. You don't have to rank any candidates you don't want to rank. Everybody's asked, what's this going to do? And my answer is, I don't know, and neither does anybody else. This is kind of a wild experiment. The one thing that I have liked about it is that it does make for a bit more of a congenial campaign. That is, if I talk to somebody and they tell me they hate, they tell me that they're supporting this one candidate, I'm still eager to get their second slot. So it prevents candidates from beating up on each other as much as they might otherwise. One of the things historically that it's also done, however, is reward candidates that don't do as much. Candidates that kind of lay low, try to be the last man standing, as polarizing candidates who are everybody's first or last choice kind of fall off. And so somebody in the middle ends up rising up. So you can get some surprising results. For my part, I think the person who gets the most votes ought to win the election. Question is, do you plan to push to do away with ranked choice voting if you win, especially if you win because of it? That's a very good question. This is a pilot program. It is not a long-term program. Sandy City has not switched permanently to ranked choice voting. And so I wouldn't have to push to do away with it. I will not push to keep it. It is not on my agenda to keep ranked choice voting going forward. This is going to be an experiment. Nobody knows where we're going to land. I want to see what the outcome is before anything else, but it's not a question of whether or not I win. It's a question of whether or not the citizens of Sandy understand what's happening. Because even when I explain it to people, they stand there, and probably a lot of you are still looking at this and going, I still don't get it. I don't understand how this works. I don't think it's a good idea to have a voting system that the people who are the voters don't understand. And there have been efforts by Salt Lake County to educate voters and do all these kinds of things. I think, elections, the idea that the person who gets the most votes wins that's a model that has worked in elections since the beginning of time, and I don't see a reason to change it. All right, so there is a sample ballot available, Joe has asked. Joe, I'm not sure if I have your email address. If you want to send that to me, I can send you a copy of the sample ballot, or if you want to text your email address to Kelly. Anybody who wants a copy of the sample ballot, please send your email address to Kelly Cassidy, and we'll get that sent to you after the meeting is over. Does anybody else want to talk about ranked choice voting, or do we want to move on to bulk waste pickup?
Jim, I have a question.
Sure.
Who are the ones that dropped out, leaving 8?
I don't know their names. I
It'll
could
be
go back.
on Sandy's website then.
The names of the people who dropped out are no longer on Sandy's website.
Okay.
They've just been removed. It was interesting because
there was 2 people, it looked like a husband and wife team.
there were 2 husband and wife teams.
Yeah. Mhm.
One of them is still on the ballot, not the team, but the husband is still on the ballot. That's I think his name is Randall Jones.
Jones is still on. Okay.
He's still on the ballot. His wife was on the ballot with him. She's no longer on the ballot. And there was another couple that was on the ballot.
Jensen's. And they
Yeah.
both dropped out.
They dropped off.
Okay. Good to
So
know. Well, isn't it possible with the ranked choice voting that you could have one who's the top vote getter, even with the ranked choice? Somebody will get the most votes.
it is possible that somebody can get
Yeah.
50% on the first ballot. Yes.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay.
That is possible.
Yeah.
With 8 candidates, I don't know how likely that is. Hey, can you guys hear my dog going nuts? I don't know what his
Yeah.
problem is.
It's okay.
Apologize for that. Hey, Jamie,
He's
can
trying
you take care of Titus? Anyway,
He's trying to tell us who to vote for.
he probably is. He's expressing his ranked choices. So, yeah, the one experience I had with ranked choice voting was in the 2004 Republican gubernatorial convention. In the state convention, they did ranked choice voting. And John Huntsman was heavily favored to win that, and he did win it. But the second place choice was a complete surprise. It was Nolan Karras, and he sort of just rose up from nowhere. He lost in the primary, but that was an example of a ranked choice vote that produced a result that was a huge surprise. And he had just kind of laid low, and nobody had really been following him. And he didn't offend anybody, and he was able to rise up into the top 2. But John Huntsman was the top vote getter, and he ended up winning. All right. I want to get to Karen Nelson's question. She says, please explain whether or not you support the bulk cleanup program. If the program continues, how would you improve it? I do support the bulk cleanup program. There was a lot of confusion about it. It's still going on. At one point, there was a vote to cancel it. 2 of the candidates that are running for mayor voted to cancel it. I think that was Monica Zoltansky and Brooke Christensen. But everybody else tried to. The problem with it has been that the Department of Environmental Quality from the state has said that people are putting their waste out too early. And so when it rains, the the rainwater is getting into storm drains and it's being funneled through the waste, and they're concerned that it's contaminating the water supply. And so they say that if Sandy continues it without any changes, that there's a possibility that they're going to face a severe fine from the state. And the city council hasn't really done anything to sort of mitigate that. And we've moved forward. My bulk waste pickup is supposed to be within the next few days. And we put out stuff out onto the curb, waiting for the bulk waste pickup. I think it's somewhat irresponsible for the city to be playing a game of chicken with the state, which is essentially what they're doing. That we're moving forward. The bulk waste program is tremendously popular. It's a vital part, I think, of life in Sandy City. And so people going forward, people want to maintain it. And there was the concern that it had been taken away. And now the city's just hoping that the state doesn't do anything about it. I think a responsible mayor, and this mayor, our current mayor, I don't mean to speak ill of him, but this current mayor has decided to just essentially abandon the city. He's not weighed in on this. He's not doing anything about it. And he hasn't come into the office. And so we have the possibility of facing a severe fine from the state. And the way I would mitigate that is that I would go to the state and have conversations with them. Because the challenge that we face is not that we're doing bulk waste, it's that people are putting their bulk waste out weeks, sometimes months in advance, or at least a month in advance. I've had people in my neighborhood just start dumping stuff from their yard out into the street weeks ahead of time. And I think if we had strict code enforcement to enforce a 3 to 5 day window for when bulk waste could be out on the curb, I think we could take that to the state and get a commitment from the Department of Environmental Quality that we would avoid a citywide fine for that kind of issue. That's, I think, how we would improve it. It's just such a vital part of life in Sandy City. We plan all of our yard maintenance. We cut down trees in our backyard knowing exactly when bulk waste is going to be, and we schedule it accordingly. Okay, yeah, we're going to cut this down. We're going to do it on this Saturday because we know bulk waste is the next Wednesday, et cetera, et cetera. And I think so many residents of Sandy do that just to see it disappear, as some of the city council have been willing to do, or to just ignore state consequences from it. I think both of those are irresponsible, and I'm committed to making sure that the bulk waste program continues, and it continues in a way that is effective and avoids any kind of sanction from the state. Okay. Who should we talk to in order to express the fact that we are against ranked choice voting? At this point, the city council is the one that made the decision. So obviously we would talk to the city council, raise the issue with mayors and mayoral candidates, just to make sure it's not going to happen next time. I don't see a path for ranked choice voting to be repealed in this election. They've already issued the sample ballots. They're going forward with it. I think they've already canceled the primary, so I don't see how there's any way. We're on the train, and the only way out is through. We've just got to keep going. But I think most everybody I have talked to about this is frustrated with is very frustrated with the ranked choice vote. And I would, going forward as your mayor, I would do everything in my power to return to the idea that the person who gets the most votes wins the election. Karen made a comment about bulk waste pickup. During the cleanup, the city has done nothing to police it. Our city looks like a third world country. I've heard that from a number of people. I think the biggest challenge with that is that people start putting out waste so early, and there isn't any kind of code enforcement for waste that's out there. We need to have, if we want to avoid a fine with teeth from the state, we need to have fines with teeth from the city, enforcing code enforcement to make sure that in the flyer I got, that window that I was talking about, it says, please put out your waste only 3 days before in advance. And, that's great to put that on a flyer that very few people have read. But I think everybody realizes the city isn't going to enforce that. And we need to enforce that to make sure that the bulk waste program continues in an effective way. I've got a long message, a direct message. I may have missed this since I logged in late, but please tell me more about your fundamental beliefs or where you stand on some of the national issues right now. Race theory, vaccine mandates, and then talks about talks about another candidate, and I don't want to beat up on any other candidates. I get asked about critical race theory an awful lot. I don't really have any use for critical race theory. And what I mean by that particularly is that I don't want to see municipal government turned into a proxy battle for national issues. I've been asked about abortion. I mean, I'm pro-life, but at the same time, there's nothing that the Sandy City mayor can do about abortion. I mean, that's not a municipal issue. And I don't see an ideological difference between a Republican or Democratic approach to bulk waste pickup, for instance, or to the kinds of, and critical race theory. Even if I wanted to somehow implement critical race theory, I've just said to people, how would I go about doing that? I mean, to me, any discussion of critical race theory in a municipal election is a bit of a distraction. I can sit here and grandstand. I'm a lifelong conservative, and I can sit here and throw some red meat out to people who are, interested in the national issues. But I think the focus of the mayor, I'm really grateful this is a nonpartisan election, because I think partisan politics get in the way of municipal government. The conservative ideology that I ascribe to has always said that the government that is closest to the people is the government that is most effective. And I firmly believe that. And I think municipal government is more effective the less partisan it is. And that we're responsive directly to citizens, and that we're not trying to engage in a proxy war for national parties. All right, so I think those are all of the questions I've seen in the chat. Does anybody want to raise one? Or Kelly, do you have any that have been texted to you?
Yep, I've got a couple of text ones. Let's start with Big Cottonwood Canyon. Paraphrasing, what's up with that?
What's up with that? That is an excellent question. So I don't know if you all know what's up with Little Cottonwood Canyon. The Utah Department of Transportation has been conducting a study to determine what they want to do in order to alleviate traffic concerns up Little Cottonwood Canyon. They had 5 different proposals. They have narrowed it down to 2 proposals, neither of which would be my first choice. I've gotten emails and complaints from people who said, you need to come out strongly against these 2 choices. And I'm happy to do that with this qualifier, with the recognition that the fact that I have come out strongly against them does not in any way stop them from moving forward. This is not a decision that the Sandy mayor gets to make, and it's not a decision that a mayoral candidate gets to make. And any public comment I make on this has no more weight than any citizen's public comment. They have opened it up to public comments, and a number of candidates stood up. I went to a Butler Middle School hearing where they talked about the 2 options that are still on the table. And there were a lot of really angry comments, and UDOT sort of took them all in stride. But that decision is likely to be made and finalized before the election. So, if that sounds like a cop-out, I apologize. I'm not trying to cop out, but if you are looking to me to stop or change the direction of what the Utah Department of Transportation is going to do. That is not something that is in my power or in the power of any other candidate. And I know that there are other candidates that are sort of running around and talking about this. And I just want to say up front, any candidate that tells you that this is their decision is either deluded or dishonest. And that's important for you to know. So with that, recognizing that, the two options that are on the table, I believe one of them is so bad that it's still on the table only to make the other one look good. So the bad one is they're talking about dynamiting the canyon in order to add a third lane to the highway. And they don't know what the environmental impact of that is going to be. They're not sure what the cost of that is going to be because they don't know what's in the side of the mountain that they're going to be blowing up. And they've said that dynamiting the canyon would be more expensive than the other option, be more environmentally destructive than the other option. And it would also be more expensive to maintain than the other option, to continually maintain avalanche control and other things in that canyon. So, so with that said, the option that I think is a done deal, I mean, don't hold me to this because I don't have any inside information, but just from my instinct is, it sounds to me like they are planning to build a gondola that would launch from the area around the Lakai restaurant and head up, and it would only stop at the two ski resorts. So it would stop at Snowbird and at Alta. And it would take, I think it's 37 minutes to the top from the base. And they would build 3 parking structures in order to feed into the gondola. And then you take from the parking structure, you would take the bus up to the gondola and then take the gondola. One of those parking structures is going to be a large, I think 600 car structure right on Highland and 94th, right by the Alta Canyon Rec Center, right by the Walgreens there. That Walgreens parking lot is going to probably be transformed into a parking structure. I look at that, you know, even though this is not what I would want to do, what I want to do, incidentally, if anybody's interested, I think the best solution would be, and the least expensive solution, I mean, both of these solutions are going to cost billions of dollars, or at least 1.5 billion is the estimate for the gondola. But my solution would be to shut off traffic to the Little Cottonwood Canyon for the 30 days out of a year where it's a real problem. And you would shut it off to private vehicles and you'd only run buses. And that's a reversible choice. It's not something you'd have to build new infrastructure for. And that was one of the options that was among the 5 that were being considered, and it's no longer being considered. So, you know, where are the small government conservatives that want to spend less money in this mix? But, you know, it is what it is, and the gondola looks like it's going to happen. If the gondola were to happen, I think the next mayor needs to do everything in their power to take advantage of the economic opportunities that would come from that. You know, we've got a dead Shopco that's been sitting there for 5 years. You've got a dead Fresh Market right across the street from there that's been sitting there for at least 3 years. When you start having people coming to this gondola and tourists coming through here, I think that's a great economic development opportunity to do all kinds of things with that area, to bring in new retail. People have talked about the possibility of bringing in new hotels in that area. And so I would say, okay, this is the hand I'm dealt with, just like with ranked choice voting. You know, you have to deal with the hand you're dealt with. And I think that there are ways to do that that could benefit the city. So that's kind of a long answer to that. Question from Julie. How do you feel about taxes and raising or lowering them in Sandy? Taxes, you know, raising taxes in Sandy City doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a number of reasons. I mean, ideologically, I am opposed to raising taxes on principle. But the only tax that Sandy City has the power to raise is the property tax. And the amount of revenue that is generated by property taxes in Sandy is relatively minuscule compared to the amount of tax revenue that is raised by sales tax. Sales tax is the lifeblood of city coffers. And Sandy City has been blessed with a vibrant economic engine in the form of the Auto Mall and Shields and Costco. That whole area down there, the Southtown Mall, although the Southtown Mall is facing real challenges as the whole retail environment has changed. But that has been a vibrant economic engine for the city of Sandy for a long time. And the way to generate more revenue for Sandy City is not to raise taxes. It's to increase economic activity. And one Costco is worth millions of dollars to Sandy City, and it doesn't require any kind of tax increase. So here I am talking to you about this Shopco and this Fresh Market that are sitting empty. You've got the Macy's that's sitting empty there in Northern Sandy. You've got that Rite Aid that is sitting empty. You've got these just big retail spaces, all of which, for every single one of those spaces you can fill, you can bring in millions of dollars to city coffers without any kind of a tax increase. So that, I think, is the mayor's primary responsibility. The mayor's legislative power is relatively limited, but the mayor's ability to function as a sort of economic development director, to go out and, I was listening to another candidate who was saying, when I'm in there, I'm going to unleash our economic development director. I'm going to set Nick Dirksen free, is what she said. And I thought, well, why isn't Nick Dirksen free now? And first of all, if Nick Dirksen is the guy that we're going to rely on to generate economic activity, why aren't we voting for him? Why not cut out the middleman? The fact is, I've had tremendous experience in both the public and private sectors and understand how that relationship works. And I'm going to be out there meeting businesses and doing everything in my power to function as an ambassador for the city to the business community and saying, look, you've now got all this new traffic going up Little Cottonwood Canyon. Don't you think this is the perfect place for you to take advantage of the millions of tourists that are coming through this city and parking their cars right across from your business? I think that's an easy sell. But that's, I think, what the next mayor has to do. I mean, that's the focus. And so the idea of raising taxes is, we did that fairly recently in order to try to give the police, our police officers, a raise. They raised the taxes, and then they didn't use the money for the police officers. But if you're going to raise taxes, at least do what you say you're going to do with the revenue. And this city council wasn't willing to do that. So I found that very frustrating. And I wouldn't be looking at tax increases. I would be looking at bringing businesses back to Sandy. What are the biggest, Tana asks, what are the biggest differences between you and the current mayor? The current mayor, it's interesting, has endorsed two of my opponents. So I guess he's taking advantage of ranked choice voting. And I thought, oh, geez, I'm really glad. Somebody asked me, well, were you hoping he would endorse you? No, I said, I don't care who he endorses as long as he doesn't endorse me. I think that this mayor has demonstrated a lack of responsibility to the citizens he was elected to serve. To hear, I was speaking to a former, somebody very, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he was very prominent in the administration prior to this one. And he was telling me about a conversation that he had had with the current department head, saying, well, what does the mayor think about this? And the department head said, well, I haven't talked to the mayor in 5 months. And the guy I was talking to said, what kind of mayor doesn't talk to his department heads for 5 months? I got a phone call from Zach Robinson on the city council. Was talking to him, and he said, yeah, well, I called the mayor to see what he wanted to do about fireworks, to see if we wanted to add some more fireworks restrictions. And I just couldn't get him to return my phone calls. And I said, what kind of mayor does not return the phone calls of the city council? I mean, it's just irresponsible. This mayor got off on the wrong foot when he stepped in and he raised his salary on his first day, and he reversed that, but that sort of set the precedent for the fact that this mayor decided from the outset that that politics was not a team sport for him. Politics, a mayor is not a dictator. A mayor has to work with the city council, has to work with the public, has to work with business. And this mayor has checked out. And so I think the biggest difference is that I am going to be fully engaged, both with the business community and the public, as well as with the city council from my first day. And I'm going to do it with the salary that I'm being paid on my first day. I'm not going to jack up my salary the minute I get into office. But I mean, I just feel like this mayor has been irresponsible in terms of how he has functioned in office. I've never met him. I've never talked to him. I have no personal animus toward him. And one of the things that I think he has done that is encouraging is that Sandy City I think, had fallen somewhat behind in terms of getting online, paying bills online, having an online presence, and doing all of that kind of thing. And this mayor, the one thing that I think he's done that has greatly benefited the city is that he has enhanced Sandy's online presence, and I'm grateful to him for doing that. Okay. Glenn Melzer says, what is your approach to the issue of high housing prices, along with the need for housing for our growing population? That is an excellent question, Glenn. I had a conversation with a real estate agent, and he was talking about the housing shortage, not just in Sandy, but throughout the entire state. And I said, well, you got to love that because prices are, going through the roof. So your commissions have got to be great. And he said, I hate it. I said, why do you hate it? And he says, because every seller becomes a buyer. And once they've sold their house, I got to find them a new house, and there aren't any houses. And, unless they move out of state or out of the country, they can't afford to live here. The housing shortage is terrible. That was really eye-opening for me. My father always used to say, when he'd get on the Senate floor, and he'd say, people don't realize that you cannot repeal the law of supply and demand. It's like repealing the law of gravity. The reason housing prices continue to rise is because the demand for housing in Sandy City is insatiable. People want to live here. It's a beautiful place to live. We have marvelous services in the city. You can go to Hale Center Theater or the Rio Tinto Soccer Stadium in the evening after having hiked out at Bell Canyon Reservoir all day, and it's like you're on the other side of the moon. I mean, that night and day, you've got both of this urban living and this beautiful outdoor recreational opportunity in the same city. There isn't any place in the world like it. That demand is not going away. So the only way to be able to mitigate housing prices is to increase the housing supply. Okay, so that sounds easy, but the problem is Sandy City has no room to grow horizontally. We have to grow vertically. We don't have any empty land around us to annex unless we, take over Midvale or something. And that's not on my plan. We have to figure out a way to do high density housing. And many, many people, including me, get very nervous about the idea of high density housing because, I walked my dog past this huge apartment complex that was just sort of plopped into the middle of a residential neighborhood against everybody's wishes, and everybody's terrified that's going to happen in their own backyard. The solution to that, the answer to that is not to say no high density housing. Because if you say that, you increase demand, housing prices skyrocket to the point where there's no possible way your children will ever be able to live here. Just a quick side story. I grew up in Southern California, in Calabasas, California, which is where the Kardashians now live. I got out before they got in. And we moved to Calabasas. It was sort of a sleepy cow town, but it quickly became a very wealthy community. And there, I think it was People magazine said there are more billionaires per capita in Calabasas, California than anywhere in the world. And I went to my 30th high school reunion and I bumped into all of my friends, and all of them have normal jobs that pay normal salaries, and they all still live in Calabasas. And I said, well, how do you afford a house in Calabasas? And they said, we can't afford a house in Calabasas. We live in our parents' house. My parents, we either live in their basement or they gave us their house. because most of the people that grew up, they were 1 or 2 child households. So, there were 6 kids in my family. So I don't know who would have gotten the house if we'd stayed there. But Sandy City runs the risk of becoming Calabasas unless we deal with the housing shortage. And the way to deal with it is to focus high density housing in the downtown Sandy area. I want to see huge towers filled with apartments and condominiums and all kinds of things right there downtown. And so people and create a mixed use community, because you have an infrastructure there. You have State Street that feeds into that. You're not going to have huge traffic problems. You have traffic arteries that can accommodate that. You're right off of I-15. And if you live in those communities, you have grocery stores and retail outlets in the base of those communities. So people come down from their condos and walk to their shops, and they don't get in their cars. There are people who love to live that way. You're seeing that right downtown. The City Creek development has realized that right downtown Salt Lake. But the beauty of it is that if we pursue that in downtown Sandy, we can maintain the single family homes that we all love throughout the rest of the city. You can have both if you have a balance. That is the only way to be able to address the housing shortage and hopefully start to bring housing prices down to reality. Because you can't repeal the law of supply and demand. All right, I went on kind of along on that one because I'm getting some more questions. Mike Baum says, Jim, what do you feel like is the most important issue we are facing as citizens of Sandy? As mayor, what solutions would you offer to this issue? And that's an easy one to answer because I think that's my previous answer. I think growth is the biggest challenge we're facing. And a mayor has to be able to provide a vision for responsible growth in Sandy City. And that's going to include a mix of high density and single family bedroom homes. But there are a number of other issues though that we are facing. Public safety has to be at the top of the list. We've seen drive-by shootings in Sandy. I also went to the University of Southern California and am used to drive-by shootings in South Central Los Angeles. I'm not used to drive-by shootings in Sandy City. So public safety is at the top of the list. If we don't have a safe city, we don't have a city. And I think I want to focus on the idea of expanding preventive rather than reactive law enforcement. What do I mean by that? I mean, I want to see cops in cars driving through city streets. I want to see people recognizing that police officers are out and about in the community. Because when they see that and they see the police presence, there's all kinds of research that demonstrates that is the greatest defense against crime. That people are not going to jump into, people are not going to pick a fight with the police when they know the police are in the community. So growth and public safety are the two top issues there. And those are the kinds of things that, I've got Karen saying high density housing does bring traffic issues. And Karen, you're absolutely right. Which is why high density housing, the only place to do it is in areas that can accommodate that kind of traffic. State Street and I-15 can accommodate a high density development. Sago Lily, cannot. And Sago Lily, I get to my house driving, I go up Sago Lily, and the speed limit on Sago Lily is 25, and it's a 2-lane street, and people come roaring through that at high speeds because it's become this sort of major artery through there. And so high density housing, it vastly increases traffic. It needs to be done in areas that can accommodate the traffic. And it also needs to be done with a vision for mixed use development, which we haven't really explored nearly to the extent that I think Sandy City can. In the City Creek development, there was a conversation with Harmon's, and the church that was trying to expand City Creek said, we want all these people living downtown, And so they went to Harmon's and they said, we want you to build a Harmon's downtown. And Harmon said, well, we don't have enough business there to be able to accommodate it. And the city said, well, would you have enough business if we paid you, if we charged you only $1 a year for the land? And they said, yeah, maybe we can swing that. Harmon's downtown, it's this beautiful, in downtown Salt Lake, it's this beautiful store, and they pay $1 a year for their land, because the church, in creating that development, recognized the need for that kind of a service in order to provide a mixed use development. So the people that live in the City Creek Towers can walk to the grocery store. They don't get in their car and go anywhere. So, we need to explore that. And, Sandy has a master plan, a 25-year master plan for the downtown area called the Cairns. I don't know if you've all heard of that. But the Cairns, it's designed to create just exactly those kinds of mixed-use developments. And the Hale Center Theater is part of that, and the soccer stadium is part of that. You see mixed-use developments elsewhere in the valley. At Daybreak, they're doing that. That is the wave of the future. That is the only way Sandy is going to be able to grow responsibly. So I think we need to focus on that. Yeah, picture increased traffic around Auto Mall, Costco, and Home Depot. As you get further and further away from the downtown area, you have less of traffic arteries to be able to feed into it. So yeah, those are real challenges. So if you go to the downtown area, you see these beautiful billboard type signs that say coming soon, and you have this picture of this massive building that's going to come. And with this mayoral administration, none of that has been proceeding. In fact, this mayor, one of the first things he said when he got into office was, Sandy is closed for high density development. And I think that's had a chilling effect on the plans for the Cairns area, which doesn't reach all the way down to Costco, which focuses primarily, if you drive right around City Hall, there's still a great deal of land there. If you imagine, okay, how many high density towers could we build here? There's real potential there. And that's the way to keep those kinds of things from showing up in your backyard. So anyway, all right. So I think I've gone through the questions that are in the chat. Does anybody want to raise a question that's not in the chat?
I'm going to jump in, Jim. It's Kelly. We've been 45 minutes, so it's about time to wrap it up. I've got a couple of questions, but a couple of them seem to revolve around who are your opponents? And what do you know about that?
Yeah. Well, so I could answer that question better than I could answer it 2 weeks ago, because it used to be that there were 6 people on the ballot that I had no idea who they were, and 5 of them have withdrawn, and I don't know a whole lot about the one who remains. But the rest of my opponents, they're good people. Having run for office, I don't think people realize just how easy it is. People think they're doing a patriotic service for their nation by being rude to a candidate. You hear a lot of really nasty things when you're out and about, and you just got to take it in stride. And so my hat is off to anybody that is willing to jump into the arena. And the people who have jumped into the arena, who are in this race, are decent, good people with a commitment to public service. 4 of them are current sitting city council members. One of them used to be on the city council, was on the city council for, I think, 26 years. The other is the manager of the city council. He's the paid employee of the city council. And this is, frankly, one of the reasons I got into the race. So I looked at that and I said, okay, so this is the status quo. If you're happy with what your city government has become, you've got 6 candidates who are happy to give you more of the same. I don't think the status quo is acceptable. And so, I look at my opponents who are good people. I don't think that they have the vision necessary to break free from the kind of rut we dug ourselves into these last few years. as I say, Sandy city government is broken. I don't think the people who broke it are the people who are going to fix it. And so, I don't want to beat up on anybody individually. I just think the status quo is such that Sandy City needs a bold, fresh, new start. And I don't think that the defenders of the status quo are going to be the ones to give it to us. So, all right. Yeah, I usually don't want to take this longer than an hour. So I just got one new message. Oh, that's Kelly. He says, if you want to talk to Jim, call him 971-5457. That is my phone number. Please feel free to reach out. Would love to talk to you one-on-one. If there's something you didn't want to raise in front of the whole world, you can certainly reach me one-on-one and we can talk about it. But
Jim,
I am very much
Jim,
enjoying.
I have a question.
Sure.
As I talked to you this week, a lot of the candidates are saying the same thing: public safety, good, appropriate economic development, public safety. I see a lot of the same thing. So what I'm trying to do is determine what differentiates them and how would one rise above that and differentiate them. We can all say the same bullet points, but how are we going to be different? What are we going to add besides that? That's what I'm looking for.
That is a great question. And it highlights the fact that the mayor's role is different from the role of a city council person. A mayor's role is that they are an active ambassador out in the community. And so as these guys start touting, okay, well, public safety and all these same kind of talking points, it's all right. Well, tell me the experience that you're going to have as you go out to business leaders, to Capitol Hill, to reach out to these guys. What have you demonstrated your ability to go out and make a difference in the community beyond the kind of legislative things that you're doing? And I have had the kind of public and private sector experience that's going to make me an effective ambassador for the city from day one in a way that I don't think any of my opponents can match. I've spent the last 20 years essentially working in the political arena, working up on Capitol Hill in Salt Lake during the legislative session. One of the things that this mayor and this city council have really dropped the ball on is that we're not up lobbying for the kind of resources necessary to do big projects in Sandy City. One of the reasons we have the Stalker Stadium, one of the reasons we have Hale Center Theater is that the mayor before this one was up talking to the legislature, trying to get money from the state to benefit the city of Sandy. The guy I was talking to who worked in the previous administration said, we fixed 13th East with $7 million from the state that we wouldn't have been able to have in terms of road money in our current city budget. But because we were effectively lobbying the state, we were able to get that. I've worked on Capitol Hill. I've worked to get resources for people, for businesses and for communities. And, I don't think anybody else that's in this race has had that kind of experience. I don't think anybody else in this race has spent the time in the political arena working with businesses as well as working with constituents. And so I think what sets me apart is not, we all to some degree want the same thing. I would push back on that even, because there are some people who say, okay, well, yeah, but we're not going to have any high density housing and we're just going to, hide our heads in the sand. And so there are some people in this race who are not business friendly and are not encouraging economic development. But even those who are, they haven't had the private sector experience that I've had. They haven't had the high profile sorts of relationships with lawmakers that I have cultivated over the last 20 years. So I think that's what sets me apart. So does that answer your question, John?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
All right. So we are coming up. It's 8:54. Again, the chat is going to disappear from the recording. So if you want to take down my number, please go into the chat right now and take a look at that. I'm just going to end a little bit with where I began, where I talked about the fact that, okay, and I've talked at length about the fact that you've got plenty of people in this race who are going to give you more of the same. I want to be more optimistic than that. I think Sandy's future is incredibly bright, but the decisions that we make now are going to determine what this city looks like in 20, 30, 50 years. And I think that we can't afford to have 4 more years of an administration that isn't engaged in making that future a reality. And so I think we need to work together to put together the vision of a city that we can love and make sure that that future is one that is going to be of great benefit to us, to our children, to our grandchildren. And that's why I always say Sandy's future starts now, and it starts with this election. And I hope that we can do everything we can to make sure that we make that future what we want it to be. And that's why I am asking for your vote. So thank you very much, and hope to talk to you all soon.